Hi everyone, today we're speedrunning through all the Targaryen kings who sat the Iron Throne. So let's start with the man himself, Aegon the First Targaryen. He didn't just become king, he created the kingdom. He landed at what would become King's Landing with his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys. He conquered 6 of the 7 kingdoms in about 2 years. The North bent the knee, Dorne stayed independent, and anyone who resisted got a taste of dragon fire. The Field of Fire? 4,000 men burned alive in an hour. Harrenhal, he roasted Harren the Black inside his own fireproof castle. Aegon forged the Iron Throne from the swords of his enemies and ruled for 36 years, creating the unified kingdoms that we know now. Aenys the First ruled for 5 years. He was Aegon's son with Rhaenys. Aenys was not his father. Aegon was decisive and strong. Aenys was weak and indecisive. His reign was basically 5 years of constant rebellions because nobody respected him. The Faith militant uprising nearly tore the realm apart when he allowed his children to marry each other in the traditional Targaryen fashion, which the Faith and the small folk really didn't appreciate. He died at 35. Next we have Maegor the First, or Maegor the Cruel. He ruled for 6 years. Aenys' half-brother Maegor was completely unhinged. Maegor seized the throne and decided violence was the answer to everything. He's famous for the trial by 7, in which he was the only remaining combatant. He had 6 wives, killed most of them, and he had architects who built the Red Keep murdered so they couldn't reveal its secrets. He died mysteriously on the Iron Throne itself, found with his wrists slashed. Next we have Jaehaerys I, known as the Conciliator, and he ruled for 55 years. After the nightmare of Maegor, Westeros got Jaehaerys I. He's remembered as the best Targaryen king ever. He made peace with the Faith, built the King's Road, he created the first unified law code, and held the Great Council that established succession rules. He brought unprecedented prosperity. His sister wife, Alysanne, was equally brilliant, and together they had 13 children. But he outlived most of his children and grandchildren. By the end of his reign, he was a broken old man who watched his children and grandchildren die. His grief set up the succession crisis that would eventually lead to the Dance of the Dragons. He was succeeded by Viserys I, who ruled for 26 years. His greatest accomplishment was, well, keeping the peace for literally 26 years, but unfortunately his worst failure was setting up the Dance of the Dragons. Viserys named his daughter Rhaenyra as heir, but then remarried and had sons. He never officially changed the succession, but he never properly handled the growing tension in the realm. He died of illness after years of declining health. The second he was gone, the realm exploded into civil war. He was succeeded by Aegon II. Some of the realm supported Aegon II, Viserys' son. Some of the realm supported Rhaenyra. What followed was the Dance of the Dragons, the bloodiest civil war in Westerosi history. Dragons fought dragons. Both sides committed atrocities. Aegon II was burned by dragonfire, crippled, poisoned by his own supporters, and eventually died after feeding his sister to his dragon in front of her son. He won the war, but at catastrophic cost. Most of the dragons died, the realm was devastated, and Targaryen power was permanently weakened. He was succeeded by Aegon III, the Dragonbane, who ruled for 26 years. Rhaenyra's son became king at age 10, crowned on a sea of corpses. He watched his mother get eaten by a dragon as a child, spent his entire youth in war and trauma, and ruled as probably the most depressed king in Westerosi history. The last dragons died during his reign, hence his nickname, though it wasn't really his fault. He was deeply, deeply melancholic, and wore only black. He rarely smiled, and only produced heirs out of duty. His hand, Viserys II, basically ran the kingdom, while Aegon sat there, traumatized. He did give the realm stability. When he died, he was succeeded by Daeron I, known as the Young Dragon. At age 14, Daeron became the king and immediately decided to do what no Targaryen had managed, conquer Dorne. And he actually did it. In a brilliant military campaign, he conquered all of Dorne in a single summer. But then he tried to hold it, and that went really badly. Dornish insurgency, guerrilla warfare, and endless rebellions made it impossible. Daeron died at 18, trying to put down another revolt. Brave, brilliant, and dead before 20. He was succeeded by Baelor I, or Baelor the Blessed, who ruled for 10 years. If Maegor was one extreme, Baelor was the other. Daeron's brother was the most pious king ever, to an absolutely insane degree. He imprisoned his own sisters to avoid the temptation, walked to Boneway barefoot to make peace with Dawn, nearly died from snake bites. He tried to replace the castle's swords with prayer books, forgave his enemies to a fault, and eventually died after fasting for 40 days. Was he a saint or mentally ill? Well, both. The realm respected him, but was probably relieved when he starved himself to death. Religious extremism, not a great governing philosophy, unfortunately. He was succeeded by Viserys II, who ruled for 1 year. So remember Aegon III's hand, who actually ran things? That was Viserys II. He'd been ruling from the shadows for decades. When he finally became king at age 49, he only lasted 1 year. Possibly poisoned by his own son, barely worth mentioning, except that he was exceptionally competent. Apparently, being good at your job as king makes you less interesting historically, unfortunately. He was succeeded by Aegon IV, known as Aegon the Unworthy, who ruled for 12 years. Now we get to one of the worst kings. Aegon IV earned his nickname by being spectacularly terrible at everything except making bastards. He had at least 9 mistresses, legitimized all his bastards on his deathbed, causing a century of civil war, was morbidly obese, tried to build a giant wooden dragon to conquer Dawn, it burned before launch, and spent the realm's money on his appetites. His greatest accomplishment? Making the Blackfire rebellions possible by legitimizing his bastard Daemon, who is my favorite character in A Song of Ice and Fire, so I will forgive Aegon for that. He was succeeded by his son, Daeron the Good, who ruled for 25 years. After his disaster of a father, Daeron II was actually competent. He brought Dawn into the realm peacefully through marriage, something 5 previous kings failed to do with dragons. He was scholarly, diplomatic, and wise. There were rumors about him potentially being a bastard from Aegon the Dragon Knight. He was succeeded by Aerys I, who ruled for 11 years. Daeron's son Aerys was brilliant, but completely uninterested in ruling. He'd rather read books than deal with governance, so he let his hand Bloodraven run everything. His reign was stable because Bloodraven was ruthless and effective. Aerys just wanted to study and contemplate. He died without heirs, possibly murdered, and honestly probably didn't notice the kingdom around him. Smart guy, wrong job. He was succeeded by his brother, Maekar I, who ruled for 12 years. Aerys' brother Maekar was a warrior king who'd accidentally killed his own brother in a trial by combat. He was stern, capable, and constantly dealing with the aftermath of the Blackfire rebellions. He died in battle, putting down a rebellion at age 58. Solid king, but his death created a succession crisis because his kids were either dead, unfit, or at the wall. This led to the Great Council that made his fourth son king. Aegon V, known as Aegon the Unlikely, he ruled for 26 years. He was known as the Unlikely because he was the fourth son of a fourth son. He never expected to be king. He grew up among the small folk as a squire to a hedge knight, understood their struggles, and tried to reform the realm for the common people. Noble goal, terrible execution. The lords resisted every reform. His own children defied him by marrying for love instead of political alliance. He became obsessed with hatching dragons in order to restore Targaryen power so he could enforce better rules for the small folk. This obsession led to the tragedy at Summerhall, where he died in a mysterious fire while trying to hatch dragon eggs. His entire family almost died with him. Good intentions, horrifying ending. He was succeeded by Jaehaerys II, who ruled for 3 years. Jaehaerys II barely gets a mention, and we don't really know a lot about him. Most of his reign was consumed by the War of the Nine Penny Kings, but the World of Ice and Fire says he was capable, And it's worth mentioning he reconciled a lot of the unhappy lords who didn't like Aegon's reforms. However, this probably hurt the small folk, but that's a whole other thing. So we don't know much about him. He ruled for 3 years and he died, and his son Aerys II became the Mad King. He ruled for 21 years. He started as promising. He was charming, ambitious, energetic, but he grew increasingly paranoid and violent. The defiance of Duskendale, where he was held captive, broke something in him. He started to see traitors everywhere, burned people alive for entertainment. He murdered Rickard and Brandon Stark, and he ended up causing Robert's rebellion. Aerys II was the king who ended the dynasty. His madness, cruelty, and paranoia turned the entire realm against House Targaryen. He was killed by Jaime Lannister, his king's guard, who reluctantly killed him to save the city. The Kingslayer Act that defined a generation.